Hi guys, and welcome to my little attempt to demonstrate how I have painted the first few bits on my Tyranid carnifex. As you can see, it is shiny, and that is because at the moment the finishing layer on it is gloss varnish. I normally matte varnish on top, but actually I'm liking how the gloss is working on this, and how it's kind of at first I didn't like it, but it's definitely grown on me, and people are feeding back that it looks cool with the gloss varnish on it. Now I'm just turning it around because obviously in photos things can look a lot better I say that than they actually are. If you take it from certain angles, it looks cool. If you look more closely at some of it, you'll see it's not perhaps as blended as well as some people are able to blend. I don't use a wet palette. I need to start using a wet palette and sort of experimenting with that to see what kind of effects I get. So anyway, without much further ado, I'm going to get going on the painting because I don't want to waste everybody's time with endless yakking. Just a quick run through of what I'm using here. I quite like using miniature paints, so I've got miniatures paints black. Now you can find these on the internet. I find there's in my local sort of gaming store in Norwich in the UK, in the games room, for those of you that have visited there, it's still going strong. They stock these, and they are typically a bit cheaper than your normal miniature paints, and they come in these really nice glass jars. And to give you an idea of how much is in them, that's a Games Workshop pot in comparison. So there's definitely more in these than in some of the other brands. So that's the black, the chocolate brown, and also their paint on gloss varnish, although it's a bit worn because I've used it a fair bit. So that's the three from them that I use. I then use two from Games Workshop. Word to the wise is one of them is really, really old, so you probably cannot get it anymore. The first one is the Shabdi bone, sorry, which is, for all intents and purposes, bleach bone of the old variety. So it's the same kind of colour. You just want a bleach bone colour. It's the same with the chocolate brown. It's normally like a vermin fur or something like that you can use. And the other one, which is really, really old, for those of you that are too young to remember, this is a really old Games Workshop Citadel colour brown ink. I believe it's a brown ink or a brown wash. Now, those of you like the old school illustrations, little demons and stuff on there. So instead of this, maybe Nuln Oil, maybe Army Painter strong tone or dark tone will probably do a similar thing. Really what I use this for is, as you will see, is I'll get to a certain point and it will all look rather kind of, I don't know what the best way of putting it is, not so well blended, maybe a little bit too light. So the wash over the top, and once you've left it, kind of brings everything a bit back down to ground, you know, down to a darker colour, but also helps blend everything in together. And I'll do that before I put the gloss on. So without much further ado, I shall get going. Probably starting with a 50-50 black and brown, or roughly 50-50 anyway. This layer doesn't matter so much, but I do add plenty of water because it does just help where the black will meet the brown. It will kind of help, really. Right. Let's go and have a look at reference points of my other stuff. Now this coat you'll want to cover kind of as much as you want on the ends of the pincers. because what you'll be doing is bringing it up in layers in terms of lightness. Again, at this kind of point, you can't really make a mistake. There's nothing really to be accurate about. It's just a matter of blocking in the colour, really, at this stage. So, going from that, I go straight on to my chocolate brown. The key bit to this is actually making this a little bit more watered down than you did the previous layer, because then you almost get 2 layers out of it then. And I'll show you what I mean. Add it on, but again, you don't go as far as you did with the previous layer. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I don't know how well it shows up. Let's see if I can bring it forward a bit more. It kind of, you see how that blends in a bit more because it's not so thick. The paint's not so thick. It's more the edge where it meets the darker colour underneath it is what you're looking at. Don't worry about it so much towards the tip because that's going to have other layers on top of it anyway. But it's just that edge there, when you've watered it down, it doesn't leave the brush marks. It kind of finds its own way to blend out, and it's kind of lazy, but I like it. And I think that's probably why a wet palette works and why other people will get a much better result with blending. In this instance, here we go. So again, you do the same thing on this. And hopefully you can see that there is a contrast, but you may need to tease this out a little bit more because this one isn't. Again, you don't want too much on your brush because it kind of loads it. But if you think the edge is not quite blended enough, literally just add some water and tug that edge out a bit. What you're looking is for like I said before, that paint, essentially the pigments in it, you want the pigments to be more spread out around the edges of the area that you're painting. So again, maybe looking at it like that, you can see that edge there, a really good example, along this bit here, is probably a little bit more defined than that. So what you might want to do is just add some water, tug it around a little bit. You see that? And so now it's not as defined an edge. You're spreading the pigment out using the water. Again, you'll need to then go back to your other paint as you were doing before and just add it in. it's starting to take a bit of shape, and then you can see the sort of darker layer underneath, but it's blending well enough. Work quite so well. Right, so I shall have a go now. Let me think. Probably needs to be a little bit darker than that, if I'm honest. Again, with different paints, there's different levels of pigmentation, so it's hard to get it right. I don't want to make it too dark because otherwise it doesn't really bring anything forward. And again, I'll be watering this one down again, so it's going to be a bit of a thicker consistency than a wash, but not much more. And I should definitely only use it on a little bit of this mixture that I've made up. Right, here we go. Again, it's exactly the same thing as you did before, but just go around and leave it a little bit on top of the layer below. So you're leaving enough to make it like a sort of, it's faded up. And again, you're looking at doing a similar sort of thing around those edges. Lists of people that I watch on YouTube for these sort of things as well. There's a really good guy for airbrushing called Bully's Painting Parlour, I believe it's called. He's got some really good videos on how to start if you're airbrushing. And there's another guy as well that I'm about to look at today that I've seen linked elsewhere. See if he's any good. Again, I apologise if I keep going out of shot. This is something completely new to me, so I'll get better at it the more of them I do. Don't worry too much if the paint goes slightly in the crevices like it's, as you see just over there, it's done that. Later on, I'll wash that as done. Right, so we are back with me having painted the highlights on. I actually sneakily did some on the leg as well, because that leg was ready. But anyway, so now you should be able to have a better idea of what this claw is looking like. Now, I'm not particularly happy, if I'm honest, with the end of the claw so much. It's not quite as nicely done as that one. However, I don't mind. I'm going to use a wash. If it goes badly, I shall just go and do it again later. But the main thing is that you get the idea of what's going on. So yeah, there you go. And what I do is just add a bit of water. This is going to make it spread a lot easier, and also not just completely sink that colour away. Now, there's no two ways about this. It literally gets slapped on. So you want to put it everywhere. So you're automatically, on that one, it's made it pop a bit. And watch, it will do the same again with these. So it's like a lazy man's painting. That's what I like about washes. When I first started, I thought everything was about layering, and you know, then you heard people say, "Oh no, you can paint if you use a white undercoat. You can literally paint with washes." And I was like, I'm not really so sure on that. I'm still not 100% sure on that one. Never really done it, but definitely washes help. I've had camo that doesn't look quite right, and then I've applied a wash, and it makes it pop sometimes. So literally everywhere that you've painted, you want to get some of this on, all over. It's a bit of a way of adding like I don't know what you call it, maybe a filter to something, but on a miniature. So if you've not used washes before, I recommend giving them a go. It's a bit scary at first because you're never quite sure, but you should start to see that actually this helps pull it all together a bit more. So as you can see on the other bits, yeah, it kind of tones down those contrasts, especially you can target it a little bit. So I'm going to do that a little bit in those areas where I might even give a second layer to those areas. You can also see how those ridges that I highlighted are now sticking out even more, because they're going to get even less of the wash staying on them. I guess it also helps give it that kind of sheen, so it helps contribute towards the gloss. Again, just literally whack it on. Don't be scared. It's not gonna, I mean, obviously you don't want it too thick, you don't want it pooling too much, but you can't go far wrong. Aha! So we have the claw, as you can see on the other side, looking very, very similar. Like I said before, that bit slightly annoys me. You see it stands out that it's not been blended as well as on the other side. Well, who worries? So at the shaking, that's me getting the gloss ready. Now I sometimes water the gloss down a little bit, and it's quite hard to see on a palette because it's kind of clear, as you'd expect. But this bit again, I'm only going to show you a little, because painting gloss is, you just put it everywhere. it's not difficult. And obviously you've got the finished picture of what the other side looks like anyway already, and I'll add it to this video, so just in case you've forgotten what it looked like. Literally a little bit of water to make it flow a little nicer, and then you just go nuts. Again, my advice would be use an old brush, possibly the same one that you used for the wash, but you just go all over. In places where it pulls, it might look a little bit blue, but don't worry about that. And the other thing I found is that sometimes it reactivates the wash a little bit, but again, don't worry about that either, because you've seen how it looks when it finished, and it literally looks really nice, so don't worry about it. The only thing that I do after this sometimes is, because I find the combination of the wash and the gloss sometimes dulls the highlights you've done. I sometimes go around with the bone one more time to just pick out the edges and the high spots, and then, as I did on the head, which you can see in some of the photos, I actually added a little bit of white to the bone, and just a little bit more highlights on them. You see that? So it's another level on that, on the head. So go round. The important parts to cover quite thick with gloss are the points on the arms and the claws, because they will probably get exposed to things like the foam in your cases the most, and if paint's going to get rubbed off or anything like that, it's going to be in those areas. So that's where you really want to make sure that the gloss is nicely done. I sometimes even do 2 coats in those places.